I think it's the first time it's happened to a European airline, but I mean, this was a case of state-sponsored, it was a state-sponsored hijack, it was state-sponsored piracy, but unfortunately I can't say much about it because the EU authorities and NATO are dealing with it at the moment. We're debriefing the crews. Our crews did a phenomenal job to get that aircraft and almost all the passengers out of Minsk after 6 hours. But we have to do a detailed debrief today with the NATO and EU authorities.
Fair enough, I understand you're restricting what you can say. It must have been very stressful for everybody, but particularly, I presume, for your staff, the pilots and crew, because it must have been very frightening for them.
I think it was very frightening for the crew, for the passengers who were held under armed guard, had their bags searched. When it was clear, it appears, that the intent of the Russian authorities was to remove a journalist and his travelling companion. And, you know, we believe there was also some KGB agents offloaded off the aircraft as well.
So there were, your understanding is there were agents on board as well on that flight.
So.
Just finally on this, will it change your plans in terms of flying over Belarus? Will you make any changes to your schedules, do you think?
I think we, like all the European airlines, are, you know, looking for guidance today from the European authorities and from NATO. And if we are directed, we've asked them, should we fly around Belarus? I mean, we don't fly over Belarus much, and it would be a very minor adjustment to fly over Poland on those routes. But we will take our lead from the European security and safety agencies.
Okay, all right. Look, let's move on and talk about reopening. It seems announcements due on Friday about the reopening. Are you happy at the speed at which the government is reopening the economy and international travel?
No, I mean, we in the tourism industry are bitterly unhappy. I mean, what we've been promised on Friday is not a reopening, but an announcement of when eventually they might get round to doing something. All of which is entirely inappropriate. I mean, we have two main issues at the moment. Ireland is closed to tourism for two reasons. One, we have this ridiculous rule that UK visitors must quarantine at home for 14 days when they can flood across the border with Northern Ireland with wild abandon. So the restriction on UK visitors is unwarranted, particularly when the UK yesterday is now at 75% of its adult population has been vaccinated. And the second issue is we have this bizarre and, you know, completely useless hotel quarantine restriction where we have about 40 countries on the list. Now, the only ones we care about are the European countries for obvious reasons. But we have visitors from France, Belgium and Luxembourg must stay in a hotel for 14 days. But visitors from all the other EU countries don't have to stay there. We then put countries like Angola, Congo, Kenya, Rwanda and Zambia on our quarantine list when there's no direct flights from any of those countries anyway. So it is completely useless. It has had no effect. The Indian variant has arrived here while this hotel quarantine is in place. And all we're doing is we're saying to the world that Ireland is closed for business. Now, we have been calling on Eamon Ryan, who is without doubt one of the worst transport ministers we've ever had in our history, to come up with a plan. The plan is reasonably simple. UK arrivals should be allowed in here without restriction from the end of May, from the 1st of June. That's where most of our Irish people are working, living. It's where you would be able to reunite most of families. And they will come in here with the benefit of 80% vaccination. They're way ahead of us. And the EU arrivals, and I think this is where I object to some of the NEFIT kind of commentary, they keep classing international travel as it's all one amorphous lump, and it isn't. EU arrivals should be allowed into Ireland unrestricted from the 1st of July, when Ireland will be about 80% vaccinated and most of Europe will be 80% vaccinated as well.
I suppose the counter-argument to that, and there'll be lots of people listening to, today who'll agree, the counter-argument would be, what about the variants, particularly this Indian variant, which there are concerns that maybe the vaccine, and particularly those who only have one dose of the vaccine, won't be properly covered by it. And we could be opening ourselves up to a whole heap of trouble if we do that.
Yeah, I know, but we've had this variant scariant theme coming out of NEFID. First it was the South African variant, then it was the Brazilian variant, then it was the Kent variant. The vaccines are effective against all known variants, including the latest one, which is the Indian variant. There will be other variants coming. Ireland's population at the end of June will be 80% will have received the first vaccine. The first vaccine provides significant defence against the Indian variant. The second vaccine, which follows on, and to be fair, they're doing a great job on the vaccine rollout, the second variant will be effective. Once you've had the second dose, you're 80-90% effective. We will have that level of dosage by the end of June, which is why we're saying, by the end of June, which is why we're saying from the 1st of June, allow in all the UK visitors, and from the 1st of July, all European visitors. The long-haul travel to the southern hemisphere from Asia, fine, by all means have a different dates on those. But the British should be allowed in here from next week. They're allowed in here across the border with no restrictions whatsoever, and the Europeans, who will be 80% first dose vaccinated by the end of June, should be allowed in for the 1st of July. And if we don't, our tourism industry is on its knees. Like, it's easy for Ryanair. We can move aircraft out of Ireland as we have. Aer Lingus are moving aircraft out of Ireland. But our tourism industry is going to be devastated. People will say it's okay, the staycationers will take care. They will take care of hotels in the south and in the west. But the massive number of hotels and tourism industry we have in Dublin, nobody is taking a staycation in Dublin. We need UK visitors and European visitors if you're going to get the vast majority of hotels and our tourism attractions in Dublin open, because the staycationers are not going to come to Dublin for their holidays.
The mandatory hotel quarantine, it seems that Dáil is going to vote this week to extend it for another 3 months until September. Is that an overreaction in your view?
Well, I mean, it's utterly pointless and useless. You know, it serves no purpose. It doesn't keep any variants out. The Indian variant got here while the mandatory hotel quarantine was in place.
Might we have more cases? Might we have had more cases if we didn't have that?
No, we won't. We have no direct flights from India. I mean, what's the point of having there is absolutely no point in having a hotel quarantine on visitors from Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Rwanda, when we've no flights from those countries. They're all going to get here through Europe or through the UK. They can come here at the moment through Northern Ireland. The hotel quarantine was a very ill-judged measure, dreamt up by largely the opposition parties, and our government were not lacking a couple of vertebrae to be able to explain to people hotel quarantine doesn't work and it won't keep out variants. Vaccines are the future here. And we keep complaining. Why? We have a Minister for Transport, Eamon Ryan. Now, you know, he falls asleep in the Dáil, and in our view, he's been asleep in his office for most of the last 18 months. He has had on his desk from the aviation industry a 10-point recovery plan since July last year, nearly 12 months ago. None of it has been implemented. He has done nothing. I had to listen to him yesterday on Newstalk. And, you know, he's a nice man. He means well, but he's utterly ineffective. All that you get is we'll have more discussions, we'll have more talks.
Are you being a little unfair to him? Are you I mean, he has to balance everything. Yes, he's Minister for Transport, but he's also a cabinet minister that has to try and save people's lives in this country.
The vaccines are saving people's lives. If you look yesterday, we had thankfully just over 100 people in hospitals and we had less than 40 people in ICUs. The vaccines have done that, not the government. You know, we will have 80% of our population will have received their first dose vaccine by the end of June. It's a phenomenal success. We now should have a plan. The government on Friday, Micheál Martin, if he had any leadership, should be out on Friday saying UK visitors can come in here on next Monday. They can already come over the border from the Northern Ireland, and we're welcoming EU visitors, just EU visitors. We're not saying everybody international travel, just EU visitors on the 1st of July. That would give our tourism industry, our hotels, our tourism attractions an opportunity to recover through July, August and September. But at the moment, Eamon Ryan is saying, well, we'll wait for the EU system and that might be announced in July and it might take us 6 weeks to implement. The summer will be over. The kids will be back in school by the time Eamon Ryan comes up with a plan. We need the plan now. Last week, the Portuguese government said they were welcoming UK arrivals because the UK is so heavily vaccinated. The Spanish government said no restrictions on UK arrivals. We're the only European country with restrictions on UK arrivals, despite the fact that we've an open border with the UK. It is nonsense. And the hotel quarantine is utterly useless. We would live with the hotel quarantine if you at least took the last remaining EU countries off the list. There is no reason or argument for having visitors coming in here from France, Belgium and Luxembourg being told to stay in hotels when they can cross over the border and fly with us in from Holland or from Spain and no hotel quarantine arrives. It is arrant nonsense, and we don't need it anymore because thankfully the vaccine program is going to gives us the means out of this. But we need a date, and it should be UK arrivals from next Monday or Tuesday the 1st of June, European arrivals, no restrictions from the 1st of July.
Just very finally, Michael, look, I think it's fair to say you've been critical of the government from day one in relation to COVID restrictions. When you look back on it, with hindsight, were some of those restrictions justified, or do you think overall we overreacted to COVID-19?
I think overall we overreacted to COVID-19, but to be fair, NEFIT's job is not to run the economy. NEFIT's job and Tony Holohan's job is to get the COVID cases down to zero. So they don't really care if we close the economy and cost hundreds of thousands of jobs. That's not their mission, and that's correct. But our government's job and our transport minister's job and our tourism minister's job is to actually weigh in on behalf of transport, tourism, job creation. And what's been a lamentable failure in all of this is the government and our ministers have keep deferring to a bunch of civil servants in NEFIT and have allowed them to run the economy. Now, we should have done more. We should have been better on test and tracing. We should have done better on the speed of the vaccine rollout. Ireland was number 2 in vaccine rollout in the first couple of weeks. We've now fallen to number 17 or 18. But we'll get there by the end of June. So I think, there's no point now in looking back. The real question now is, are we going to save hotels, tourism jobs this summer in Ireland? And to do that, we need to allow UK visitors in without restrictions next week, and the Europeans from the 1st of July.
I should have asked you just very quickly, many Irish people booking flights to travel abroad for August?
Huge numbers. I mean, people are actually they're booking now to go to Portugal, Spain, Italy, outbound they're booking for about the middle of June. We've had very heavy bookings for the middle of June, July and August. People are now ignoring the government restrictions. Nobody's booking in May, but from mid-June onwards, as the school holidays take place, we see hundreds of thousands of Irish people heading for the beaches of Portugal, Spain, Italy, and we have the lowest fares available as always. But this is not just about us. I mean, Aer Lingus ourselves, we've moved aircraft out of Ireland. We've closed, the Shannon base is closed at the moment. It will reopen in the middle of the summer. The Cork base is closed. It's a much wider issue. People say, I just want to put people back. I don't need Ireland. We can move our aircraft to the UK and to Europe. But we want to get Ireland back open, and we have a tourism minister who needs to get his finger out, and we need an action plan, not more delay and more waffle.
Michael O'Leary, Group CEO of Ryanair, thank you for talking to Newstalk Breakfast this morning.